Well, let's go to the impressive and increasingly popular Adam Creighton, one of the few realists that we have as we navigate our way through this current mess. He makes a very valid point today that, quote, our generation has foisted extraordinary costs on future generations in a vain attempt to save lives from a disease that is lethal to a few. He joins us. Adam, good on you. Well, we're in your debt. It's one thing we're never told. We're never told, never discussed. You make the point that Britain's chief scientific advisor, Chris Whitty, said in March last year, quote, the great majority of people, even in their 80s, will survive. Even in the most vulnerable, oldest groups, yes, in a very stressed health service, the great majority who catch the virus, and not everyone will, they will survive it. We're not told any of this.
Yeah. Yes, that's true, Alan. Well, certainly we were told that back in March last year when there was still a semblance of sanity in the world, but those sort of comments, which are still true, still very true, they can't be uttered anymore. And just on your earlier point about future generations, if you go to the federal budget papers just before the pandemic struck, the forecast for debt in the middle of next year was $360 billion. And the most recent budget, it's now $835 billion. So almost an extra $500 billion of debt just at the federal level. And so we keep hearing about we need to make sacrifices for the future.
Yes, they run up...
For climate change, but we're certainly not making sacrifices now.
That's right, Adam. They run up $22 million every weekend on tests, and 0.14% test positive. The WHO figure today on coronavirus cases, 99.4% are mild. Now, you said today, after 18 months, about 4 million people have died. We don't know whether it's from or with coronavirus. You say most of advanced age, apart from some tragic exceptions, 4 million, but 60 million people die every year. Adam.
Yes, and those 60 million, Alan, the average age of death of those people would be far, far lower than the average age of death from COVID. So it just goes to show this extraordinary moral hypocrisy in the world, where no one cares about the children that are dying every year from various curable diseases around the world, or even starvation. In fact, we're going to make more of them starve now by sending the global economy into a depression, or with enormous debts, and trade has collapsed in these poorer countries. So the moral hypocrisy is just extraordinary. The reality is that 4 million is a very small percentage of what is normal. And indeed, the average age of death in Australia and Sweden is about 85, 86. So, we've got to have some perspective here as a society.
We've got no perspective, Adam. You and I have got some, but there are young people watching us tonight, and they will be paying off this debt when they're 80. We've racked up, as you say, trillions of dollars in debt and trashed the norms of liberal democracy.
Well, this is the thing that actually worries me more than the debt, frankly, is that we have these principles in our society that have operated for generations, and they've basically been suspended now for 18 months, almost 18 months. That is not a temporary period of time to suspend slabs of the Human Rights Charter, whether it's Victoria's charter or Canada's or the US's constitution. These fundamental rights of association, of movement, of speech in some cases, have been suspended, and that's just not acceptable. And the question is, when do we get them back? If you had have said to me in 2019 that Sydney would be locked down in 2021, you wouldn't be believed, but that's seemingly going to be true. So the goalposts just keep moving all the time.
Yeah, and then you say, and I quote you, silencing different scientific opinions or mandating individual tracking devices, all in the name of saving lives, may no longer be far-fetched. We're never going to get this stuff back, and they won't listen to you, don't listen to me. These are know-all people who just pursue the punishment of innocent citizens.
Yes, look, 12 months ago, I would have thought that those, both of those suggestions were crazy, but you couldn't rule them out now. Surely someone will come out and say, look, we need to save lives, so therefore we need to put tracking devices on everyone to make sure they don't break quarantine. And then, of course, all the sheep will be like, oh, yeah, that makes sense, let's do that. And some other politician might say, look, we've got to remove all of the views that disagree with the health advice because it's damaging the message. You can also see that being said. But it's just extraordinarily sad that, that thinking people think that that's the way to go as a society.
I know. And I mean, these are the problems we face were chosen by government, not by the people. Closing schools, businesses, they were choices government made. And as you say, sensationalist media reporting created the impression we're all doomed.
Yes, look, I'm so sick of hearing that all these costs have been so-called caused by the pandemic. They haven't been caused by the pandemic at all. They've been caused by the decisions of governments and of the broader population to be ridiculously scared by a virus that is, that is of course very serious for some people. But as we said earlier, Chris Whitty put it, even for the over 80s, the vast bulk of them survived the virus. So it's hardly, in any historic sense, a very serious or lethal virus.
Absolutely.
But we've just lost our minds over it at enormous cost.
Well, let me just say to our viewers, this brilliant young man, thank God for him, wrote today, future generations, the young ones listen, will inherit a less free, more embittered society where vaccination status, attitudes to compulsory masking and lockdowns will divide people as much as class and race have before. Adam, it's wonderful to talk to you. Keep going. We have to keep going. If we don't keep going, the cost will be too high. Great to talk to you. There he is, Adam Creighton.